Welcome back, everybody. We're diving deep today into the science of learning. Um, we've got some really interesting research, and we've got experts here to help us break it all down,
Yeah.
really hoping to help all of us understand how to learn more
Yeah.
effectively.
It's really exciting, some of the stuff coming out now
Yeah.
about the brain and learning. It feels like we're on the verge of
Yeah.
a revolution in learning.
Absolutely. And one of the things that just kind of jumps out
Yeah.
at me from all this research is the power of retrieval practice.
Retrieval practice.
It's kind of a simple idea, right?
Yeah, it is.
Like instead of just passively rereading your notes or highlighting,
Uh-huh.
you're actively trying to recall information from memory.
Yeah, and that active recall.
Right.
It's like building a mental muscle.
Yeah.
Each time you struggle to remember something and then you succeed,
Yeah.
you're strengthening the neural pathways
Right.
associated with that information.
That makes a lot of sense.
So if you think about like walking through a forest
Right?
and you're creating a path, the more you walk that path,
Yeah.
the clearer it becomes,
Right.
the easier it becomes to follow.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
I love that. And it makes me think about how many times I've just sat there
Yes.
and reread the same paragraph over and over,
Yes.
hoping it would just kind of like magically sink in.
You and everybody else
Yeah.
rereading it gives you a false sense of fluency,
Yeah.
but it doesn't really stick. It's
Yeah.
not as effective for long-term retention.
Makes sense.
Retrieval practice forces you to really engage with that material
Right.
and make those connections
Yeah.
that really stick.
So it's like the difference between looking at a map and actually
Yes.
navigating the terrain yourself.
Exactly.
Oh.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that retrieval practice actually has a very low cognitive load.
Okay.
So it's not overloading your working memory.
Gotcha.
So you're freeing up space to
Yeah.
think more complexly.
Like clearing your desk so you can actually do the work.
Exactly.
That makes sense now.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people listening have heard about growth mindset
Mm-hmm.
and how important it is for learning.
Yeah.
Where does that fit into all of this?
So growth mindset is definitely beneficial,
Okay.
believing that your abilities can be developed,
Right.
but it's not the only factor.
Okay.
And there's something called the expertise reversal effect,
Expertise reversal effect.
where sometimes too much guidance can hinder learning,
Oh, wow.
especially for people who already have some knowledge
Okay.
in that area.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like if you already know how to ride a bike,
Yes.
you don't need someone holding onto the handlebars.
Exactly.
It might actually make it harder
Yeah.
to learn to ride the bike by yourself.
Sometimes you just need to struggle a bit
Yeah.
and make mistakes.
And figure things out for yourself.
Yeah.
That's a good point. It reminds me of that story of Julius Yego, the Kenyan javelin thrower, who taught himself how to throw by watching YouTube videos.
Yes. That's amazing.
Talk about taking charge of your own learning.
Right.
He wasn't just passively absorbing information.
Yeah.
He was out there experimenting and practicing,
Wow.
refining his technique.
That's incredible. And it really kind of highlights the difference between declarative learning,
Yes.
which is like knowing facts and concepts,
Right.
and then procedural learning,
Yeah.
which is more about developing skills and habits through practice.
Exactly.
So that brings us to some of these specific
Mm.
active learning techniques
Uh-huh.
we hear so much about these days,
Yeah.
things like spaced repetition and interleaving.
So space repetition, it's all about timing.
Okay.
Instead of cramming information all at once,
Right.
you space out your review sessions
Okay.
over time,
Gotcha.
allowing your brain to forget a little bit
Uh-huh.
before you relearn.
Yeah.
And that process of forgetting and relearning
Right.
actually strengthens the memory.
It's like revisiting your favorite hiking trail.
Right.
Each time you go back,
Yeah.
the path gets a little more familiar.
Right. It's more ingrained in your memory.
Exactly.
I like that. Okay.
And then there's interleaving,
Interleaving.
which is about mixing up different subjects or
Okay.
the skills during your study session.
So instead of just focusing on one thing for hours,
Exactly.
we're switching back and forth
Yeah.
between different topics.
So instead of like studying history for 3 hours,
Uh-huh.
you might do an hour of history,
Right.
an hour of math,
Okay.
an hour of science.
So you're cross-training your brain.
Exactly.
That's a good analogy, too. I like that. And so that forces your brain to work harder
Yes.
to retrieve the information
Uh-huh.
and make the connections.
It helps you build a more flexible
Okay.
and adaptable
Gotcha.
understanding of the material.
And that's what we want.
Yeah. And it also highlights the benefits of varied practice.
Varied
So
practice.
it's practicing a skill in different contexts with different variations.
Yeah, this makes sense. One of the things I thought was really interesting in all this research was this whole idea of drill to skill.
Mm.
This idea that rote learning, which sometimes gets a bad rap,
Yes.
can actually be really valuable for developing automaticity.
So it's about finding that balance,
Okay.
right? Mindless repetition isn't always effective.
Right.
But targeted drilling can help you develop fluency,
Okay.
and mastery are certain skills.
Makes sense.
You think about learning to play a musical instrument
Right.
or mastering basic math facts.
It makes me wonder if sometimes we've gone too far
Yeah.
in trying to eliminate rote learning altogether.
It's possible.
Yeah.
I think we need to recognize the interplay between declarative and procedural learning,
Okay.
understanding that sometimes one can actually inhibit the other.
Interesting.
For example,
Yeah.
for some learners with dyslexia, word-laden math problems
Okay.
can actually interfere with their ability to solve the equation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the words get in the way
Exactly.
of the actual math.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Huh.
And it really emphasizes how important it is
Mm-hmm.
to consider individual learning differences
Yeah.
and the diverse ways our brains process information.
It's like the old saying, nature loves heterogeneity.
Yeah.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach to learning.
Right.
What works for one person
Right.
might not work for another.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another
Yeah.
fascinating aspect of learning, and that is the social dimension.
Yes.
So let's talk about collaborative learning
Okay.
and the challenges and the opportunities it presents.
Collaborative learning can be incredibly enriching.
Yeah.
But it definitely comes with
Right.
its own set of dynamics.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we've all had those group project experiences, you know, where some people are carrying the weight
Uh-huh.
and others are just coasting along.
Exactly.
It can be really frustrating.
It raises all sorts of questions about how to make group work
Right.
truly collaborative.
Yeah. And equitable.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of the sources we looked at
Mm-hmm.
mentioned a student named Veronique.
Okay.
And she was talking about how frustrating
Uh-huh.
unproductive group work can be.
Yeah.
And she said, and I'm quoting here,
Okay.
I go to a school that puts a big emphasis on collaborative learning.
Uh-huh.
This forces students who want to complete their assignments into the position of having to discipline peers who won't behave and coax reluctant group members into contributing.
Wow. She was carrying a lot of the responsibility
Yeah.
for her group's success.
She really was. And it can be such a drain, you
Yeah.
know,
Yes.
on your time and energy.
A real dream.
And it really highlights the importance of clear communication,
Uh-huh.
you know, shared goals,
Yes.
a sense of accountability.
Yeah. Everybody needs to be on the same page.
Right.
Understand their role.
And sometimes it's about setting boundaries,
Boundaries.
which brings us to that case study about Michael from Harvard.
Oh, yes.
You know, he was obviously a brilliant student,
Mm.
but he was constantly being taken advantage of
Mm-hmm.
by his group members.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they just relied on him to do all the work.
It's like he became the default expert,
He did.
which ironically hindered his own learning.
It really did.
Yeah.
So the Michael case study, I think, is a really good tool
Yeah.
for teaching students about setting boundaries
Yeah.
in teamwork
Mm-hmm.
and recognizing that everyone's contributions are valuable.
Everyone has something to bring to the table.
Right. And it makes me think about the role of empathy in all of this.
Empathy.
Yeah, like we want to be understanding and supportive of our group members,
Mm-hmm.
but we also need to advocate for ourselves.
Yes.
Make sure everyone's pulling their weight.
That's a really good point. You know, while empathy is a crucial skill,
Right.
overemphasizing it in education can sometimes leave students vulnerable
Interesting.
to being taken advantage of or just feeling overwhelmed by
Right.
others' emotions.
It's a good point. It's like you can't pour from an empty cup. You need to take care of yourself
Yeah.
and set those boundaries
Yes.
in order to be truly helpful to others.
It's all about finding that balance between empathy and assertiveness,
Right.
teaching students to understand and consider others' feelings,
Mhm.
but also stand up for themselves,
Yeah.
communicate their needs effectively.
And it strikes me that this whole conversation about empathy and boundaries
Yeah,
applies to educators as well.
absolutely.
You know, teachers often have to navigate these really
Mm-hmm.
complex classroom dynamics
Yes.
and support students with diverse needs
yeah.
and learning styles.
It speaks to the different ways we all approach the world
Right.
and process information.
Some of us lean more on reason and logic,
Yes.
while others are more guided by,
Experience and intuition.
yeah, it's like those personality tests
Well,
that,
yeah.
you know, kind of categorize people as thinkers or feelers.
Yeah.
It's a little oversimplified,
Yeah.
but it does kind of highlight that there are these different approaches
Mhm.
to problem solving,
Yeah.
decision making.
Yeah. And those differences in approach
Right.
can actually be connected to the two main learning systems
Okay.
we've been discussing.
Yeah.
The declarative system, which is that conscious thought
Right.
associated with the hippocampus.
Okay.
And then the procedural system,
Yep.
which is more non-conscious.
Gotcha.
And it's linked to the basal ganglia.
So our conscious thoughts and our gut feelings are both playing a role
Exactly.
in how we learn and make decisions.
And our non-conscious value function,
Value function.
which is kind of like an internal compass
Okay.
that guides our actions
Uh-huh.
and decisions based on past experiences,
Right.
emotional associations.
Like this internal algorithm
Oh,
that's
yeah.
constantly updated
Yes.
based on our interaction with the world.
Yeah.
This reminds me of that quote from Leo Tolstoy.
Yeah.
He said, "The simplest thing cannot be made clear to the most intelligent man if he is firmly persuaded that he knows already without a shadow of doubt what is laid before him."
That's a powerful point.
Yeah, it really is.
Sometimes our preconceived notions, the strength of our existing beliefs, can make it really hard to be open to new information.
Even when it's presented clearly.
Yeah, even when it's right there in front of you,
Right.
you just can't see it.
It's like we're all wearing these
Yeah.
invisible filters that shape how we perceive and interpret the world.
Exactly. And those filters
Right.
are shaped by our experiences, our values and beliefs.
Why it can be so hard to have
Yeah.
productive conversations
Yes.
across those ideological divides.
Exactly.
And it also makes me wonder, if it's possible to forget major advances, to kind of regress in our understanding, even after significant progress has been made.
Yeah.
We've seen it happen throughout history. Societies that achieve these incredible feats of innovation,
Yes.
and then they seem to lose that momentum.
Interesting.
Yeah, it really is. And
That's a fascinating question.
yeah,
And one that we should definitely explore further.
absolutely.
It makes you think about the fragility of knowledge
Right?
and the importance of constantly questioning our assumptions,
Yeah,
being open to new ways of thinking.
I love that.
Yeah, it's almost like we can be blinded by our own progress.
Right.
We become so convinced of our current understanding
Yeah.
that we fail to see the limitations or the alternative perspectives.
It reminds me of that visual you brought up,
Yes.
comparing the shipbuilding
Uh-huh.
of an 18th century ship
Yeah.
to the one used in Robert Falcon Scott's Antarctic expedition
Right.
in the early 20th century.
Exactly.
You would think that with all the advancements in technology,
Yeah.
by the time of Scott's expedition, their ship would have been far more
Yeah,
advanced
you would think.
than those built centuries earlier.
And in some ways it wasn't.
Right.
It's a powerful example of how knowledge can be lost
Yeah.
or forgotten over time.
Even in fields
Yeah.
where we've made significant progress.
It's a bit humbling, isn't it?
It really is.
It highlights the responsibility we have to not only acquire knowledge,
Right.
but also to preserve it
Yeah.
and transmit it effectively.
Across generations.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is where educators play such a crucial role.
Huge role.
They are the bridge between
The
generations,
keepers of knowledge.
the guides who help us make sense of the world.
Yes, and they have this incredible task
Right.
of not only teaching facts and figures,
Yeah.
but fostering critical thinking.
Curiosity, a love of learning.
Exactly. And doing so in a way that adapts
Right.
to the ever-changing landscape of knowledge
Mhm.
and the diverse learning needs of their students.
It's a challenging but incredibly rewarding profession.
It really is.
So we've talked about the power of retrieval practice,
Mm-hmm.
the importance of active learning, the complexities of collaborative learning,
Yes.
the need to balance empathy with assertiveness.
Hmm.
Is there one key takeaway you'd like to leave our listeners with?
You know the words of Santiago Ramon y Cajal,
Okay.
a pioneering neuroscientist,
Uh-huh.
come to mind?
Okay.
He said, "Every man can, if he so desires, become the sculptor of his own brain."
Wow.
And it speaks to the power we have as individuals
Right.
to shape our own learning.
Yeah.
And by extension, to shape a better future for education.
That's a powerful message to end on.
It is.
Thank you for joining us
You're welcome.
on this deep dive
My pleasure.
into the fascinating world of learning science.
It's been great.
And to our listeners, I encourage you to keep exploring,
Keep questioning.
keep questioning,
And keep learning.
keep learning. The possibilities are truly limitless.
They are?
Remember, learning isn't just about absorbing information.
Yeah.
It's about actively engaging with ideas,
Connecting them.
connecting them to your own experiences,
Yeah. And using
and using them to shape your understanding of the world.
That's what it's all about.
So go out there and be the sculptors of your own brains.
Yes.
Keep learning.
Keep growing.
Keep growing and keep sharing your discoveries with the world.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep those minds engaged.
Yeah, it's like we think we've arrived. And we stop looking for new solutions.
That's a good point. So it's not just about forgetting, it's about being blinded.
Yeah, being overconfident.
By what we think we know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's when we get into trouble.
That's a great point. And, you know, it makes me think about the role of educators in all of this.
Yeah.
They have such
huge responsibility.
They do. They really are the bridge between generations.
They're the keepers of knowledge.
And the guides who help us make sense of the world.
And they have this incredible task of not only teaching facts and figures, but fostering critical thinking, curiosity, a love of learning.
And doing so in a way that adapts to the ever-changing landscape of knowledge and the diverse needs of their students.
It's a challenging.
It is.
But incredibly rewarding.
It is.
This profession.
Well, we've talked about so much.
We have.
We've talked about the power of retrieval practice, the importance of active learning.
Yeah.
The complexities of collaborative learning, the need to balance empathy with assertiveness.
Yes.
I mean, what would you say is the one key takeaway?
If I had to pick one, it would be the words of Santiago Ramon y Cajal, who was a pioneering neuroscientist. He said, "Every man can, if he so desires, become the sculptor of his own brain."
Wow.
Which I think speaks to the power we have as individuals to shape our own learning.
Absolutely.
And to shape a better future for education.
What a powerful message and a great way to end this conversation.
It is.
So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
On this deep dive into the fascinating world of learning science.
My pleasure.
And to all of our listeners out there,
I
just want to encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning.
Keep learning.
Keep learning. The possibilities really are limitless.
They are.
And remember, learning isn't just about absorbing information.
No.
It's about engaging with ideas, connecting them to your experiences.
And using them to shape your understanding of the world.
So go out there and be the sculptors of your own brains.
Yes.
Keep learning, keep growing, and keep sharing those discoveries with the world.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, until next time, everybody.
Oh.
Keep those minds engaged.